Welcome, everyone. This presentation is called From Robots to Wobots. And what my co host and I are hoping to do today is share with you our experience of merging technology, specifically robots, with art and math to create some really unique and amazing learning opportunities for our students. We will be sharing some actual projects that we completed a little later on in this presentation, and you will have access to those lesson plans and materials. It is our hope that you can walk away from our talk today with something that you can take and try in your own classroom. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Sam Ramsey, and I am the Technology Integration Specialist at Anna McDonald Elementary School. We are a small Chicago suburb right on the border between civilization and corn country, so we do get the best of both worlds out here. In addition to being a TIS, I am also the head of my building's STEAM program and one of the teachers on that STEAM team. Before I was a TIS, I was the technology teacher, and way back before that, I taught a fourth grade gen ed classroom. More about me, I am mom to three wild and wonderful little boys. They are 5, 3, and 1. And boy mom life is a little bit like managing your own circus. And I do like to say that if Ringling Brothers is ever hiring for a ringmaster, I am very well qualified. Perhaps the most important thing to know about me is that I am a devoted The Office fan. So if my TV is not tuned into Cocomelon, you may find me watching The Office in my spare time. My favorite episode, hands down, is Dwight's fire drill. So thank you for coming to our presentation. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram, I did include my information down there at the corner of your screen.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Boersma, and I'm an art teacher. I've been teaching art for 11 years. I got my undergraduate degree in industrial design, but after I took a job as an arts and crafts director at a summer camp, I quickly changed my mind and found my passion. I have 3 daughters, ages 11, 8, and 5, and they're all super creative and love color just as much as me.
One of the guiding principles of our STEAM program is that all of the learning activities should be very intentional. The how and why and when all having been carefully considered so that what you end with is a very strategically constructed sequence of learning. In keeping with that philosophy, I wanted today's presentation to be the same. So you see in front of you our game plan for today, and let's jump in.
Let's kick things off by talking about our own STEAM program. This is the first year that our district has had a formalized STEAM program for these grade levels. Our school is 3rd grade through 5th grade with about 550 students. We have one-to-one iPads and a couple carts with MacBooks that the classes can share. In our school, STEAM is also considered a specials class, which means it meets once a week for 40 minutes. Our district is growing very quickly, and that's very exciting, but with that comes some growing pains. So we are teaching from a cart, traveling from class to class. Another unique thing about our program is the way it is staffed. The music teacher, myself, the art teacher, and Sam, the TIS, are the 3 STEAM teachers. Sometimes, depending on what we're teaching, we can even have a couple of us co-teach a class together. This collaboration between the specials teachers has led to some really neat innovations.
When the idea to launch a formal STEAM curriculum at grades 3 through 5 was born, I was given the chance to build that curriculum from scratch. Our building writes most of its curriculum in-house, so this was a very natural step for us to take. But the difference here was that there was no existing curriculum that I was simply updating. We were starting at 0. This was a huge undertaking. While it seemed very daunting at first, what it did was give me this very unique and kind of rare opportunity to construct something that was really exceptional. And after doing quite a bit of research, I carved out 3 principles that would be the founding pillars of our curriculum. First, I knew that our curriculum had to be standards aligned. And I wanted it to be truly interdisciplinary, incorporating standards from all content areas in all units and doing that with integrity. I also knew that I wanted our curriculum to expose students to actual STEAM careers so that they could see a clear connection between what they were doing in the classroom and the real world. My students may be young, but I wanted to give them a very specific lens through which they could view their learning so that they're able to say, wow, I really liked doing XYZ in class. Maybe that's something I'd be interested in doing as my job someday. And finally, I knew that our curriculum had to prioritize engaging, authentic assessments. The activities in which we are involving our students are fast-paced, they're highly interactive, and in the vast majority of cases, they directly mimic the tasks that someone who actually holds that STEAM career would be responsible for completing in their actual day-to-day job. Now that we've set the scene, we would love to shine a spotlight on some of the incredible things that our students and their robots have been up to, and talk briefly about how we transitioned from tech-focused robotics activities to a more integrated approach. Before our STEAM program launched, I taught technology classes for 5 years. During those years, we used the Dash and Dot robots. We coded with the Blockly app, and our activities were great. They were always the students' favorite units, and the kids were learning. Life was good. When I started piecing together curriculum for STEAM, I originally intended to just copy-paste my robotics units the way they were, the way that they had been. But as I became more deeply invested in this cross-curricular approach to pretty much everything, I took a second look at how I was teaching kids to code and how effectively I was, or wasn't, leveraging the learning power of those robots. And I have to tell you, that's when the magic happened. I compare it to the first time that you go see a movie in 3D. It was just this entirely new level of learning, and the kids ate it up. Yes, they were still learning sequences and events and loops and variables and all of the coding concepts that I had traditionally taught, but these concepts had context now. They fit a storyline. When I changed my mindset from teaching robotics as an isolated skill to using the robots instead as a vehicle for teaching math or science, or those robots as a mode of self-expression, everything changed. Students were making authentic connections between technology and math and science and art, and it strengthened their understandings in all of those content areas. I think this is my favorite picture that I've ever taken of a lesson in action. And I love it so much because it is a great illustration of the power of interdisciplinary learning. Look at how many students are actively engaged in this activity. You see students operating the robots. You see students manipulating blocks of code on their iPad. You see group members communicating with one another as they attempt to write and interpret and modify and run their sequences of code. I have to tell you, the energy in the room during this lesson was unbelievable, and all of it was hyper-focused on this one strip of butcher paper running down the center of the classroom. I think this picture brings us to a perfect opportunity to shine a spotlight on some of the amazing things that our kids and their robots have been up to. So let me tell you a little bit more about what you see happening in this picture. Remember, you'll have access to lesson plans and materials for all of the activities we share today. For this project, third graders are acting as computer programmers. The coding skills that they were working on during this project were sequences and events. Events being those blocks of code that trigger the sequence to start, kind of like how your alarm clock is your signal to begin your morning routine. Groups of students worked together to write 4 sequences of code. And each of those sequences started with a different event. So one sequence started with when you press Dash's top button, one sequence started with when you press Dash's button 1, button 2, and button 3. Each of those events triggered Dash to draw a line. You'll notice that we have rubber banded some markers to Dash's feet. Very low budget solution. The catch here, though, was that groups may have paired their events and their driving directions differently. So while pressing the top button may make one Dash robot draw a line forward, pressing a different Dash's top button may make him draw a line backwards. And still another Dash robot, when you press his top button, may draw a line to the left or the right. So once the groups wrote their 4 sequences of code, we put all of our Dash robots on this butcher paper and let those little robotic artists get to work. And this is the result. We had studied examples of the art style geometric abstraction and discussed its ties to geometry. That brought us to the math standards we addressed in this project, which were identifying quadrilaterals and recognizing their attributes. So, as these robots crossed paths, driving every which way, they started to form intersecting lines. And those intersecting lines started to create quadrilaterals. As our robots were moving, students were on the hunt for these four-sided shapes. And as they spotted them, they highlighted and colored them in. I found it incredibly valuable how many different kinds of quadrilaterals the robots ended up drawing, and how many different kinds of quadrilaterals those students were then challenged to identify. I feel that it really gave those kids a chance to solidify their understanding of a quadrilateral as any four-sided closed figure.
The next lesson we are presenting reinforced our students' understanding of events and sequencing, as well as introduce the concept of loops. This lesson has it all: coding, angles, fractions, repeated patterns, the opportunity to make a one-of-a-kind radial masterpiece. But before we could begin, we needed to introduce students to the geometry of angles. Students were then able to identify acute, right, straight, and obtuse angles. They were able to manipulate the degree their bot turned, and they could code their bots to draw any angle of any degree. The lesson was kicked up a notch the following class when students worked in groups to create a starburst pattern. When students saw how many times they would have to repeat the same code, move forward, move backwards, turn, move forward, move backwards, turn, on and on and on, it became a very natural and authentic time to introduce coding loops to streamline repetitive tasks. Kids became very good at finding patterns or loopportunities. The math did not stop with the angles. Students were already very well versed in the world of fractions, so we took the opportunity to talk about our starburst designs and what fractions were being represented. Some groups chose to use 45-degree angles in their starburst, and some groups used 30-degree angles. We were then able to discuss what this did to their final design, as well as the fractions inside the unit. And finally, students were able to use coloring tools to add their own creativity to the work. They had already created radial op art designs in art class, so again, there were so many connections being made. We talked about radial symmetry and how the starburst was created with lines radiating from a vertex. Since we don't have enough robots for each kid to work independently, all of our bot projects also incorporate loads of teamwork, peer trust and respect, as well as student-led delegation of tasks to make sure that everyone has contributed in a significant way. We spent 2 40-minute classes on this angle fraction starburst loop coding assignment. And in the next class, the bar was raised again. Students were introduced to the concept of nested loops as they created a linear series of circles. At this point, our fourth graders are talking confidently with the coding vocabulary: sequences, events, loops, nested loops. We also took this time to talk to our students about how what they were creating was called an array. We talked about the final visual display that would go in the hallway and how all of these arrays would come together as a gigantic array. After the students worked in groups to create their nested loop circles, they then created their own Zentangles inside of each circle. It was fun to suggest that they were now the robot and that their brains would come up with a neat nested loops that required them to draw with a lot of repetition. We also asked them to use a lot of variety in line, shape, and overall value between their set of circles. And it just happened that we had all of the colors of the rainbow to make this awesome display for our hallway. Each fourth grader was a part of this collaborative piece of art, and behind this beautiful display was so much math, coding, and art learning. And the fourth grade bot lessons did not end there. We took the science standard of using repeated patterns to transmit information to guide this lesson. We originally had planned to use the xylophone attachment for our robots to make words using different pitched notes, But when we hit a roadblock that prevented this lesson from working, we were transparent with our students about our problem. We were modeling real life creativity through the engineering design process. Our lesson didn't work? Okay, let's revise it and try again. In the end, we told our students that they were computer programmers who were just hired by Marvel Studios to help out on a film about their newest superhero, Wavelength. Wavelength is a hero who fights injustice and stands up for those without a voice. He, however, can only communicate through the lamp built into his chest of his superhero suit. We even made a movie trailer to go along with our story, and this set the stage for high engagement and excitement. Over the next few weeks, students learned how to use a key to read Morse code. They programmed their robots to flash secret onomatopoeia words in this code, and they were able to decode other teams' secret words as well. This lesson culminated in a final project where students learned about the use of Ben-Day dots in pop art, such as comic book art. In teams, students used black paint and erasers to print their secret word in Morse code on a sheet of paper. They then took a photo of the work on their iPads and used it as a background layer in a digital drawing where they layered their word on top. Not only were their final images very visually striking, they also represented weeks of simultaneous learning in science, technology, art, and math. Watching their teachers navigate the engineering cycle to improve upon an initial idea when it failed, well, that was just an added bonus for the kids. And the last lesson that we want to present to you is this 5th grade sand art lesson. We told 5th graders that they would be data visualization specialists. They were going to take a bunch of data and make it look really pretty. We didn't use robots for this lesson, but this was a good lesson because we incorporated all different kinds of subjects. Students first went to airnow.gov and were able to research air quality in different cities. We talked about AQI, the air quality index, and how different numbers on the AQI scale represent different levels of unhealthy air quality or healthy air quality. Students were given a color-coded key and then needed to choose a city and a range of dates and take that data and manipulate a spreadsheet to enter all that data into. They used that spreadsheet to help them in the following class when they were allowed to fill their bottle with sand. We talked to the students about how they needed to be very accurate with their measurements. They used a ruler as they poured the sand in and gently shake the bottle to make sure it was level. We talked about the science of environmental changes too. Why do certain cities have poor air quality while other cities seem to have consistently good air quality? So we covered technology with using spreadsheets and entering data into different cells and changing colors. And we covered measuring with math, and we talked about the fractions of the colors in their bottles. And the whole project was based on air quality and environmental factors. So we covered that with science. And then my favorite part was being able to introduce or reinforce some art concepts with them. The clean air quality were represented by cool colors, and the poor air quality days were represented by warm colors. We also talked about how much variety there was in their bottles. If they had thicker bands of a single color, we were able to say that those cities had more short-term consistency because that represented a few days in a row that were at the same air quality level. Overall, students loved this assignment, and it had lots of opportunities for discussions. They looked awesome in the hallway. We just took them down, but we can't get rid of them because they're too beautiful. We're still thinking about what we want to do with these. Our suggestion to you is that if you would like to do this project, maybe find smaller bottles because we have found sand can be very expensive.
These projects were magical. This is true, but they certainly didn't come into existence by magic. A lot of very intentional decisions were made to ensure that each unit was both interdisciplinary and authentic. We want you to leave this presentation feeling more empowered to make your own magic. So next, we'll outline the steps that we follow to write an integrated unit. This is my path, and it's a journey that I have taken many times over the past year as I worked to develop our STEAM curriculum. Of course, it goes without saying that this isn't the only path, and it certainly may not be the best path, but it is what I have found to be successful. I hope that you can take this path, or at least some components of it, and use it to aid you in your own lesson development. The first step that I take is to choose a focus standard. There's a binder that I keep on my desk that is filled with all the standards from all the content areas for all the grade levels that I teach. Since I have to look at it very often, I make sure that it is very colorful and organized and that it makes my teacher heart happy. But it comes in handy because when I'm ready to start planning a new unit, I peruse the standards at that grade level and choose one that is going to be the foundation for that project. Usually, I select something from math or science, since those standards are the most specific to a grade level. Next, I do some research to find a STEAM career that correlates with that focus standard. I spend a lot of time on job sites, perusing titles and job descriptions. So if my administrators were to ever check my search history, they might be a little worried that I was looking for a career change, but that is not so. You hope to find a STEAM career that has very natural ties with the focus standard that you selected, because our goal here is to enable students to make connections between their learning and real-life applications. Each new unit starts with the slides that you see pictured here. It's on this day that I welcome students to their new STEAM career. Not only does this put students in the right headspace for their upcoming project, but it also serves as a regular reminder that the things they're doing inside the classroom have actual value outside of the classroom. The third step in my process is identifying an authentic task that someone in that STEAM career would actually complete as part of their job. I'm trying to find a very natural connection between this authentic task and the anchor standard that we decided on in step 1. For example, 4th graders have potential and kinetic energy written into their science standards. So I made a unit where they're working as mechanical engineers. What type of a task would a mechanical engineer be responsible for doing that involves potential and kinetic energy? For this project, students designed and built a functional prototype of a roller coaster, and then as they watched the marble traversing the track, discussed where in that coaster potential and kinetic energy were at play. Another example might be social studies standards that relate to maps. A natural career connection would be a cartographer, and an authentic task would be creating a 3D map of a certain landscape. Sometimes deciding on the task actually takes place before I pick the career, if that anchor standard gives me an immediate idea for a project. I feel like steps 2 and 3 can happen interchangeably as long as those logical connections between the standard, the career, and the task remain intact. What you see on your screen is the second slide that begins each of our units. After that slide we looked at last time that introduces them to their career, they view this slide that outlines what kind of responsibilities a person in this career would be in charge of, as well as what kind of skills students will need to capitalize on for this challenge. The final step in my process is to simply fill in the missing pieces. By now, we've already identified our anchor standard, probably in science or math, and we've already carved out a pretty good idea of what kind of product our students are going to be creating. So it's at this point that I go back to that giant binder and I read through the standards in the remaining content areas, looking for natural ways to tie in ELA, music, technology, as they're working from adopting that first career to finishing up their challenge. I like to use this document that you see on your screen because it holds me accountable for intentionally incorporating all of my content areas into every unit. It is also at this point when it becomes exceptionally important to collaborate with others. Go talk to your art teacher, find the music teacher, consult with your reading specialist. You could even reach out to other people that you know in the field or on social media to ensure that you are leveraging every possible connection that you can to improve this learning process for your students. I can't tell you how many times Steph and I have sat down to talk about a project and she has pointed out this beautiful, amazing art connection that I just didn't see because that's her area of expertise. Like in the Zentangle project that she shared, she was able to make this really strong connection between the loops and nested loops that our Dash robots were using to draw circles with the loops and nested loops our students would use as human artists as they designed the repeating patterns in their Zentangles. So that's it. That's my process. in creating this unit that leverages our robots, that incorporates art and math and science, and really pulls all these content area standards into a beautiful interdisciplinary masterpiece.
Sam and I would like to thank you for coming to our presentation and learning a little bit more about our STEAM program. Our contact information is on this page, and we'll be sharing more materials that go along with what we've been talking about today. Have a great day. Bye.